Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Хотите жить – бегите. Хотите жить – сдавайтесь в плен. Россия не получит новую территорию Украины. Россия присоединит себя к той катастрофе, которую она принесла на оккупированную территорию нашей страны. Оккупант заполняет могилами захваченную территорию Украины. И все больше могил на территории самой России. Ценой того, что один человек в России хочет продолжать эту войну, кто хочет войны больше, чем жизнь, вашей жизни, граждане России.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 541 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And of course, we see today the Russians are panicking.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, and some pretty good news has been coming out today. But before we get into anything going on in Ukraine, we have to move on into Moscow, because if anything's really happened today, breaking news has happened inside of Moscow. Over the past day, and we've already put out a video on this earlier from all of the information we had at that moment, a little bit of an incident has occurred in Moscow that has led the Russians to evacuate Moscow City, which is the really built up and modern financial district in this part of Moscow right here where all these markers are. Moving on into the first clip of news that we got to see some video footage of the evacuation that was occurring inside of Moscow City right here. All of these people have been told that they have to leave the area, and that's largely what they're going to be doing.
Look at them all down there like rats.
Man, they're like little ants split. And we can see more of them as they move around the sidewalks, trying to get out of there, and we can also see the fire brigade, like in Chernobyl, has responded.
And these are the high-class Russians, aren't they? Like, these are the, like, top-tier office worker Russians.
These are the intelligentsia, man. These are the very high people who work with amazing folks like Volodymyr Solovyov. You know, the guy who always goes, "Schultz!" on Russian TV. They work with that guy. And also, this is really where all of the financial wheelings and dealings of Russia happens, is in these 10 blocks right here. Also, this expo center. And that's actually what the target was today, was this massive expo center, which is actually the size of Moscow City right over here. What happened is that a drone, mostly assumed to be some kind of a Ukrainian drone or a drone that was launched by a Ukrainian aligned group, ended up flying on over the expo center. And then this is where the story gets a little weird, because the Russians claim, let me make sure that I get this correct, because I got to get the sequence of events correct here. They claim that there was minor damage that happened to the building. And here's the report that we have right here. This is according to Moscow's mayor. The UAV debris fell in the expo center area, causing no significant damage to the building. That was the statement made by the Moscow mayor. But this was the explosion that we saw just before that statement was made on the building. So check it out. And by the way, you know, not showing this with no context, tell me, with an explosion this size, do you think that there was damage caused or no damage caused? Right now, in the Russian camp, we have no damage was caused by this explosion. In the other camp, which is the rest of the world, we are saying that there was some pretty decent damage caused to the building. But here's the clip. But you see that it's just a normal night in Moscow City. Very nice buildings.
Oh! Man, that's a whole lot of damage.
Let's make it a little more. Throws another one into the
chainsaw.
building. Cuts the expo center in half. But that was the
And
explosion.
I want to say real quick that in the short war summary earlier today, I wasn't sure what the building was that got hit. We did find out, obviously, like the enforcer said, or I found out, it was the expo center, and I corrected that down in the comments below, but I got flamed in the meantime. So now I've corrected it. It is the expo center, and I'm not sure if maybe that explosion happened with the stuff inside the building. Can you pause that for a second? If that happened with the stuff inside the building, you know, like those Sunflower 200 drones that we saw the other day. I don't know if that stuff was in there.
Well, it actually was, and that's just what we're about to be getting into here. But here is the actual picture of the quote-unquote debris that landed onto the building, causing minor damage, if any damage at all. This is the actual damage that that drone that just blew up in the video had caused. So here's the expo center, the front of it. And we can see the explosion and the crater that was left behind by the drone in the side of the building right there, showing that some pretty serious damage was certainly caused to the expo center. And also, this actually gives us a very good landmark point right there, is that giant star on the roof. And we can go right over here, and there's the building with the giant star on the roof. And so that means that that drone hit about right there. That's about the exact spot where it impacted. And so it actually flew in over the Moskva River and then into the building. And we can see that the damage was not minor, it was fairly significant. Apparently the drone didn't have any decent punching power, because we can see that it didn't go through a lot of the wall of the expo center, but it did fling a massive field of debris over the roof, and it also created a huge crater in the side of the wall.
I bet the Russians are regretting painting the top of that building blue. They basically painted a huge target on the top.
Well, I mean, you know, it's this big building, but yes, maybe a big target too. And we can see that the prisoners are already out there in their orange jumpers. I'm just kidding. Russians don't wear orange jumpers in prison. But they are cleaning it up as best they can. And we just see a whole bunch of random people standing around so that way they can collect paychecks, because that's how the Russian government works. And there's the MASH logo again. And I got to tell y'all, MASH is a big deal over there, apparently. But nevertheless, that's all of the clips that we got from the actual expo center itself. And I gotta say, pretty wild. Because Matthew was kind of touching on it a little bit earlier, but the Expo Center at the moment was holding the arms fair, where they had had weapons brought in from around the world. Any country that was willing to trade arms with the Russians or trade arms from inside of Russia was at this arms expo, including that little thing that we saw the other day of the Sunflower 200, which is the Chinese knockoff of the Shahed 136 drone. We can even see pictures that were made at the expo, like this one right here, of the little model truck with the Sunflower 200s put into its carry rack. And so going off of that, this may have been a drone attack, not meaning any real damage, although it certainly did cause real damage. This was meant to send a message, considering that this drone attacked the building in the middle of an arms expo. You couldn't get the messaging across any better than that, and that appears to be why Moscow City was evacuated. We currently have not heard any orders allowing people to re-enter Moscow City. From what we understand right now, only authorized personnel and authorized citizens are allowed within the perimeter of the Moscow City area at this moment, meaning that everything over from Park Krasnaya Prasnaya, and all the way over here to the highway that you can see. I don't know what the name of that highway is. It is the Kulbso. So all the way over here to the
Ring Road.
The ring road. Yeah, that is one of the ring roads, actually. All the way over to the second ring road and all the way over to this park. This entire area right here is closed off to the Russian public, as we know right now. We'll be waiting to see if any additional news and picture evidence comes out of this area, but that is the entire story as of this moment. And I gotta say, what is really insane is that nobody actually got injured or killed in this attack either. It hit the building, caused serious damage to it, and led to mass pandemonium among Russia's elite, considering that they are in Moscow City, and they all got evacuated. And beyond sending a message, it actually didn't cause any real damage or death to the citizenry of Russia. Which I gotta say, that was actually a quite nice little side effect there. It wasn't that bad. And hopefully, the Ukrainians, if they conduct attacks like this again, if they were behind this, of course, we don't really know, hopefully it'll be the same, where it just causes mass pandemonium, freak out, and damage, but it actually doesn't end up causing any injury or death to the citizenry. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the breaking news in Moscow, which was really really bizarre. I mean, you can't even put this into words. The Russians are being attacked by drones in Moscow more than Kyiv is even being hit by any Russian missile or drone at this point in the war. And the Russians don't really seem like they're trying to do anything about it, which is the most bizarre thing. And the reason why they look like they're not doing anything about it is because while they have the ability to try and do something, they could pull forces off the front or air defense batteries to set up around the area of Moscow and defend it. They don't want to do that because the Russian government believes that that'll be showing the Russian public that the Russian government is far weaker and the war is going a lot worse than it originally was supposed to be. And so that's why we see that they're allowing these drone attacks to continue without putting up any kind of real effective air defense around Moscow whatsoever. Is because of those reasons. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the city of Moscow, and we're going to be moving down into Novorossiysk, which is also in Russia as well, and we saw something amazing today. The fuel silos at the port of Novorossiysk have caught on fire and have burned. We don't know how much of the oil has ended up burning, but we can see the fire blazing right here, and this oil would have been used to possibly fuel the Russian Black Sea Fleet if they had to be moved from Sevastopol to Novorossiysk, meaning that the port facilities in this area, for a short while, will probably not be able to field the Russian Black Sea Fleet out of it if push came to shove for the Russians. Of course, big news once again, because this is putting the Black Sea Fleet in between a rock and a hard place, where it is practically unusable, no matter what the Russians try and do to eke out some kind of effectiveness or any kind of usability out of the Black Sea Fleet whatsoever. And so, of course, amazing to see. I'm also going to have to let y'all know that tonight I am not feeling that well. I actually have a pretty bad headache due to the coffee little toxic shock thing that I had last night running the stream. I wasn't able to drink any coffee either, so just letting y'all know a little bit in advance, the news will be sped up a bit tonight because I'm also feeling quite hot right now. I don't really know if I'm getting sick or what. You know, last night was like coffee backlash or whiplash or whatever you want to call it. So we're going to be going through the news a little bit quicker tonight because I don't know how well the news would even be covered if I tried. So with that, we're going to be moving on into the city of Kyiv, where we heard some really big news today, as in Alexei Reznikov stated that F-16s have been approved by the U.S. government to be sent by both the Dutch and the Danish to Ukraine. We didn't get an exact number on these aircraft deliveries, but one thing that we did get is the confirmation that the F-16s will eventually arrive. And down here in the comments section, we're not scrolling any further than that, though. Don't type in Romania. We can see a couple of F-16s flying through the Mach Loop in Wales, which is always really cool to see. And hopefully we'll see a similar sight in Ukraine here in the near future. F-16s are amazing aircraft. Even the earlier variants can really give any Russian aircraft a run for its money, especially in their multi-role abilities. And so hopefully we will see that these things make it to Ukraine by the beginning of next year, and hopefully they will be able to be quite effective both in the air and on the ground targets. Moving on from that and into our location unknowns, we've also seen a couple of fairly interesting things in the location unknowns today, starting off with our first one of some Ukrainian helicopter pilots. And of course, this video clip was made by none other than United24, an amazing YouTube channel, of course, run by the Ukrainian government for the large part, and also giving a little bit of information and details behind their Ukrainian helicopter forces, what they have been doing, and what they're currently looking like at this point in the war. And so with that, here's the clip. And let me get it all set up. And let me make sure to close that and get this set up. And here's the video.
This is rocket launcher loaded with Hydra 70.
This is Me-24, Ukraine's main attack.
Every day, the Ukrainian armed forces undertake titanic efforts to recapture what is rightfully theirs. At the forefront of every battle is the infantry, but their progress would barely be possible without help from the skies.
Is that Patron?
This is
Oh,
That
no.
bark is kind of weird, man.
Dude, that dog went, oh!
Ray,
I thought it was somebody doing that.
helicopter. These helicopters are the backbone of Ukrainian Army's aviation. To maintain and upgrade combat capabilities of these aircrafts, engineers have to basically search for the parts all over Ukraine and beyond, performing miracles with the limited resources. What's astonishing is that these Frankensteins made from different parts from different aircrafts are the ones performing combat tasks every day. Here at the base, engineers are working non-stop to keep all machines combat ready. Valery brings us to speed on what they do here.
My position is called the head of the technical and operational part of the helicopter unit. I'm responsible for 4 aircraft. I, along with my onboard and aviation technicians, maintain the technical condition and combat readiness of the helicopters. This one is called Mi-17V5, but this is an export name. In fact, it's an Mi-8 MTV5. This one is from 2012.
It takes 8 engineers to do a proper pre-flight check of an aircraft. The usual procedure involves aviation equipment, radio equipment and weapons check. This is one of the newest aircraft in the Ukrainian forces. Such helicopters were passed by the US, originally designated for the Afghanistan Air Forces. Made in Russia, the country they are ironically now seeking to destroy. Previously,
These helicopters were actually slated to go to the Afghans. That apparently did not age too well, and so now they've ended up in the fields of Ukraine instead of the mountains of Afghanistan. So that's actually how the United States had any Mi-8s or Mi-17s to send to Ukraine, is because they pretty much got them from the Afghans, were repairing them, and then while they were being repaired, the Afghan government collapsed, and so we just had Mi-8s and Mi-17s here in the US. But anyways, we're gonna get back to the clip.
the Ukrainians only had Mi-8s that were made in the USSR. Nevertheless, both generations are working at their limits, just like pilots and engineers. These are the 11th Army Aviation Brigade Kherson, originally based in Chernobyevka, Kherson region. On the 24th of February, prior to the initial missile strike on their base, the pilots were able to evacuate the most essential equipment and retain combat capabilities to this day.
I remember that night I received a command to withdraw our brigade from under attack, my squadron in particular. I was performing my tasks as deputy commander of the squadron.
Alexander is one of the most experienced pilots of the brigade. He is hopeful to return to their home base. But until that day, the brigade is scattered across the front line.
And this is
Man, that's a mean
Mi-24,
knife he's got on him.
Ukraine's main attack.
Man, that really is.
This is the first export version of the Mi-35 helicopter. We received this helicopter from our partner country, the Czech Republic. Apart from the name, there is no difference between it and the Mi-24V.
Today's combat story of Mi-24 looks easy on paper, but it involves many risks. To avoid being shot down from ground, they use indirect fire and heat traps. But their main enemy is Russia's jets. When dealing with an enemy that has air superiority, they have to avoid being tracked by the raiders. To do that, they fly extremely low. But there's a certain piece of Western equipment that makes these stories more dangerous for the Russians rather than the crew.
It's the
Tell
Hydra.
us what's next to you.
It's a unit with Hydra 70 rockets.
Yeah!
I have already completed 10 combat missions with these rockets.
The Hydra 70 is an unguided air-to-surface rocket widely used on many aircraft in different countries. Provided by the USA, this weapon already proved to be extremely efficient with a longer reach compared to the Soviet-made S-8. And thanks to some crafty modifications, it's now compatible with the Mi-24. Why are these rockets important?
Dude, you know why the
believe
Ukrainians don't
that
call it an Mi-24, they call it a Mi-24?
Why is that?
Because when they fire the rockets at the Russians hear the in the distance and they go, "Is for me," and then they all get blown away by the
Jeez.
rockets.
This is
I thought
what
you were about to give
Army
me some
aviation
technical answer or something.
No, it's
needs
no.
and in large numbers. They help us on the battlefield, and we, in turn, help the infantry.
The Army's aviation is deployed mostly for two reasons. Fire support, meaning hitting and suppressing targets, and moral support for the troops on the ground, which is just as important. The crew is now doing 1 to 3 combat stories every day, which looks exhausting.
And it is.
We ask Artem if it's challenging for him to do this much combat work over a year and a half. How many combat sorties have you completed?
As of today, I have 157 combat sorties.
And how old are you?
23 years old.
Are you tired after all this time?
Sometimes I think that I'm getting mentally tired, but when I watch videos of our infantry on the front line, I realize that I might be wrong.
And that's the end of the clip right there, but of course, amazing cinematography and storytelling from United 24, talking about those great pilots in the Ukrainian army that take to the skies every single day in their helicopters to continue to support the Ukrainian forces in the field and to help them with their counteroffensive operations. Of course, an amazing job, and one cannot overstate the value that Ukrainian helicopter pilots bring to the battlefield. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also saw the Ukrainians testing out a new Flammenwerfer. You see, Matthew, it werfens the Flammen, but this is apparently a flamethrower that comes from the US of A, and they're thinking about using it. Pretty nuts. This would be the first flamethrower used in the war.
I'm sure they're planning to use these to clear brush.
I'm sure they're just going to use these for vegetation reasons.
Man, I'm not sure if that one was working right.
Oh, no, it's working. You can actually choose to just spray out a stream of gas, so that way you have a pool of gas to blow up once you ignite the actual vapors. It's actually pretty effective. Check it out. Look, see? And then you'll light it, which you can't see on film for some reason. They didn't film that, but you can see like the glowing fire off screen. But with that, that's the end of that little clip right there. Very interesting to see. They're going to be trying to use flamethrowers. Don't know how effective they'll be. I actually feel like they might be effective considering they're going up against trench works. But a very interesting clip nevertheless. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also saw a Russian UAZ-452 exploding, aka a Scooby-Doo van. Like, Zoink Scoop, I think it's coming right for us. Blow the top off. Man, there goes the top.
Oh, damn.
And that thing is gone.
Jeez, man. Scooby and the gang just got screwed over.
Man, Freddy the Young Pioneer will not be pioneering much anymore, if you know what I mean. But with that...
Come on, gang. Let's call the insurance adjuster.
Whoa. Listen, I gotta tell you, that was the biggest explosion I've ever seen. Nothing can top it. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely amazing. More bada boom, less bang. Bing, bang, bang, bang. But anyways, moving on from that, nice to see a Scooby-Doo van get blown up. And we're now going to be moving on into our next clip, where we saw that a Russian excavator got destroyed. Now, you see, Matthew, there was a guy out there, Matthew, in the world. You know how excavators got their name?
Excavating the dirt?
So there was a guy out there in the world, and his girlfriend's name was Cavator. Very weird name, I know, but anyways, the relationship didn't really go well, and so from then on, he called her Excavator, and so that's how excavators got their name. Check it out, though. They're going to blow one up. There goes the artillery shell, and there goes the excavator, of course, hit by the artillery shrapnel, knocking it on out. Very good to see.
Why does it say at U.S. Infantryman 1?
Hell, I don't know. Someone's plugging the merch, I guess.
The infantry over there in Ukraine, I guess you could say.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, they're Ukrainian. Oh, man. But with that, that's the end of that little clip right there. And great to see that an excavator was blown away. And so we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of location unknown news and on into our casualty report, which was incredibly high today. Brace yourself, Matthew. It was huge.
Oh, my goodness. They got 10 in one day. How is that possible? Oh, my.
Oh, my. And, of
Oh,
course,
man.
we got Bobcat memes. Hey, 10 for Matt.
Oh,
Hey!
happy days.
A Gee, 10 for Matt. Hey! Millicent, 10 for Matt. Hey! And it's got a Bobcat in a Bobcat. Hey! Margaret, 2 helicopters. Power on Ukraine. Is he force aid? Hey! Great.
Oh, man, that food's looking good, too, I'm telling you.
Oh, man.
Just scroll past it quickly.
Man, I'm hungry, man. 10 Bobcats for Matt. Hey! Dude, the memes went on and
10.
on.
Good score. Love
and
it.
on. Dude, there were so many of them. And I
Oh,
got
some
say,
fresh Bobcats. Ralph the Press, man. Did you see those?
yeah, look at that, man. That thing is coming off the factory floor.
That's wonderful. I'd love to see it.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And
Beautiful, beautiful. Could we have some more?
absolutely great. We need more Bobcats. I gotta say, Bobcats are the greatest. Nothing can beat them. But anyways, moving on from that, an entire 10 Bobcat skid steers were destroyed today. Special equipment vehicles, but we call them all Bobcat skid steers. 460 Russian soldiers were also knocked out as well, which is quite nice to see, of course. Another 12 armored personnel carriers were also hit, another 17 trucks, 3 tanks, which is a little below average, 24 artillery pieces, 4 drones, and 2 Russian helicopters. Those are the 2 Ka-52s that were shot down yesterday, and they've now been put into today's casualty report to update it accurately. And so, all in all, a pretty good day for the Ukrainian armed forces as far as inflicting losses onto the Russians, and hopefully they can keep this kind of stuff up, because if they can, they'll be in good shape. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from our location unknowns and on into the Frontline news itself. And there has actually been a pretty wide variety of it, and a lot of it showing that the Ukrainians are doing quite well today and making some fairly good progress. And we also got a clip from Robotyne showing even more footage of some of those last hours before the Russians were pushed completely out of the town. And so, before we move on into that, we've got to get on into something that is very pressing. The live chat has been going absolutely insane tonight, and a lot of people didn't like the puns. I don't know if that was like ironically hating on the puns or what, but anyways, a lot of y'all have been saying a whole bunch of interesting stuff, and we always want to make sure to hear what y'all are saying. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right. And with that being said, it is time for our first poll and question segment of the stream. And our first poll says, Central Moscow was evacuated after an anonymous tip of a Ukrainian drone attack. And what are your thoughts? And spoiler alert, it didn't actually happen. And this was after that drone attacked the expo center. It looks like 40% said it was probably legitimate. It looks like 25% said it was likely a faked call by Ukraine. 21% said Russia is just scared, no call. And 14% said unsure. And on this one, I have a strong suspicion, and it's just speculation, no evidence of it, but my gut tells me it was probably a faked call by Ukraine. And I gotta say, good on them if it was, because that's trolling to the max. And they evacuated the entirety of central Moscow as a result of that one phone call, which is almost hard to believe that they took it so seriously. But that tells you how high the stress levels are in Moscow right now, that another attack is going to really hit one of those nice buildings and end up harming people. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that the drone attacks on Moscow were pretty insane. Honestly, I don't even know what the poll prompt was. So, what happened? Reread the line.
It says that central Moscow was evacuated after an anonymous tip of Ukrainian drone attack, and thoughts?
It did happen. The drone attack did happen. We don't know if the Ukrainians were the ones directly behind it. It could have been a partisan group, but it was evacuated. And it does appear that the Russians are very concerned about future drone attacks like the one we saw on the Expo Center. And so with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next poll says reports indicate that Russia is hiding its Black Sea fleet from Ukraine and their new Sea Baby drones. And what are your thoughts? 72% said Russia can't avoid attack. 13% said they might avoid attack. 7% said unsure. And 8% said Russia is going to avoid attack altogether. And the Russians are trying to call this hiding, but they're basically just moving their ships around, I believe, to the side of Crimea. Or I'm not really sure where they're moving them to be perfectly honest. You really can't hide big vessels like that. But they think they are. And I think Ukraine's still going to be able to reach those vessels. And those new, ironically named Sea Baby drones, which are really massively large explosives that go around in the sea, they're going to take a hole out of those vessels and they're going to sink it like the Moskva. And it's going to happen soon. That's my hunch. But Enforcer, what say you?
Sadly, we don't have any videos on this week's map of the Sea Baby. But the Sea Baby is going to devastate a Russian ship if it hits it. It's got 800 kilograms of explosives in it that will sink a ship with just one hit, regardless of the size of the ship. We don't really know where they're going to hide them. Of course, that's the whole thing. They're trying to hide them, so they're probably not going to let everyone know. I'm guessing that they're probably heading towards Novorossiysk, which makes the destruction of the oil depot there even more important than it was. So going off of that, very interesting here that the Russians are very scared of the Sea Baby. And it's also showing that their blockade could not effectively be conducted anyways, because they don't even really have their navy entirely in the area where they would need to be to conduct a blockade. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on, I believe, into the questions.
And yes, we are. I see everybody loves the Sea Baby name. I got to say, I love that name too. I don't know where they came up with that, but it's ironic because, it's obviously not a Sea Baby whatsoever. It's more like a Sea Daddy. But, that's what it is. But anyways, moving on to our super chat, we have a $50 donation from Joseph Andronako. And hopefully I said that last name properly. And thank you very much, Joseph, for that support. He said that there is an Italian saying, he who goes slow goes far. He who goes fast dies. The Ukrainian army must be part Italian.
Damn, I've never heard of a phrase like that before. That means they're thinking I'm dying, but still, thank you so much for the support. And maybe they are part Italian because they are taking the offensive a lot slower than we expected them to. That's something that's for surely been seen. We thought that they would have made it to Melitopol by now, and they haven't even made it to Tokmak yet. But, they're still making progress. It appears that the offensive was a lot more difficult than anyone was thinking it would be, so hopefully they will go slow instead of going fast and dying. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Joseph Entrenako, you are an old guard of this channel, and you've been, of course, always here and always making sure to say very kind things in the live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta thank you so much because folks that go out of their way to support this channel, help it to be ad-free and sponsor-free. Of course, on the live streams, we have different rules for the videos because the videos do their own thing. But y'all help these live streams to be ad-free and sponsor-free, and for that, I thank you all. And I also thank you so much for helping us to keep this work going. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Drunky Monkey, who puts in a $30 donation. And thank you very much, Drunky, for that support. Hey! And he says, Hiram Slovo, and long live the LSA, and feel better at Enforcer. Live chat, please.
And thank you so much for the support, Drunky Monkey. And hopefully I will be feeling better. I hope that it's probably by tomorrow because I'm not feeling that good today. I wasn't feeling good coming back from school because it had been a very long day. And for some reason, the temperatures in none of the classes are right. It's either scorching hot or freezing cold to the point it feels like I'm now in a fridge. And, wearing shorts and a polo, kind of gets really cold really quickly. So I don't know. Maybe it's because of that. I'm not really sure at this point anymore. I have no idea. But hopefully I do get better. And I actually saw someone in the live chat saying earlier, you sound really good to be sick. Well, you don't know how much effort I put into always trying to not reflect how I feel and the way I talk on this stream, because sometimes I'm pretty unhappy when these streams start, or I don't feel good at all, but I always try and make sure to mask it with a very high-pitched and very energetic voice, because that's what y'all would like to hear, and I think that's what y'all should hear. I don't think it's really beyond letting y'all know that the stream is going to be ending a little quicker tonight. I don't really want to make it everyone's burden to know that I'm not feeling that hot, but still, thank you so much once again for the kind words and wishing the best, Drunky Monkey. And we will be making sure to get a live chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And the live chat goes to Nova Stardust, who says, do you think the Russian people wonder why Putin is hiding in the countryside if they're doing so well?
And can you reread that one again?
Yes. It was from Nova Stardust, who says, do you think the Russian people wonder why Putin is hiding in the countryside if they're doing so well?
I don't really think they asked that question much, because I don't even really know where Putin is right now. We think he might be in Moscow, or he might be at his seaside resort near Sochi. We're not really sure where he is, but they probably do think about that every once in a while, but they don't really talk about it much, because usually the cops show up and it gets really nasty whenever anyone asks a question like that. Kind of like, well, I'm not going to say that. But with that, thank you so much for sponsoring that live chat, Drunky Monkey, and thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the Frontline news.
All right, and the last one of this segment goes to Bernard Rubin, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Bernard, for that support. And he says, you could say that drone attack was Ukraine's entry into the exhibition. Man, they were demonstrating that model. They were trying to show them how it works. Man, they said, here, buy this one. You can't even purchase it. It's off the menu.
Man, they were sitting there in the Arms Expo, and the Chinese were in there going, check out this new Sunflower 200 drone. It's got all the features. And then they heard, and then they heard, watch this drive. It just blew up onto the side of the wall. Man,
that drone came in like the Kool-Aid man. It busted through the wall and said, "Oh yeah."
dude, that drone entered the Arms Expo with a bit of a bang. I mean, like that you're getting your bang for your buck out of that thing. I'm telling you. Oh man, I'm telling you. But still, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well, because that was a pretty good joke, and I hope we were able to add on to it a little bit with some of our own, made up on the spot. And so with that, thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing running, because folks like you make it possible for us to be on air and to do this 6 days a week, except for Mondays at 10 p.m. Eastern Time every single night. And so with that, we are now going to be moving on into the Frontline news. And in the Northeast, we didn't really get a lot today. And also, really quickly, I'm going to take it aside for a moment. Don't know why in the world someone's coming in here and trying to make any kind of political statement in the chat. It's against the rules. We ask that you refrain from making any political statements in the live chat. The channel has a rule that says that American politics specifically is not to be mentioned under any circumstances. So I would ask that you don't do that again. And also just letting everyone else know, just in case you haven't heard that rule before. But anyways.
Like he said, boss.
Like he said, boss. But moving on into the area of Kuzmivka, we saw a Ukrainian medic using a monocycle. You know what a monocycle is, Matthew?
Must be one tire, one wheel.
I don't really know what it is. That's kind of why I was asking. But we can see him riding it. And we also hear some kind of a weird
Wait
music.
a minute. That's one of those, like, electric things that, like, people use in cities to get around, like, one wheel thing.
Yeah, it's actually doing pretty good over terrain. Like, it's actually not that bad.
I mean, I've seen people fall off those and, like, get injured, like, on flat concrete. I have no clue how they're balancing that thing.
Man, I don't even know. But he did an amazing job at it. And we see him lugging the thing around after he made it to where he was supposed to be. And then the video clip ends. But really cool nonetheless. And, of course, love to see that the Ukrainians just come up with ingenuitive, neat stuff like that to do on the front lines, to either make things more efficient or just to do it for the hell of it. And so that's all the news that we got out of the Northeastern Front today. And we're now going to be moving on into the area of Bakhmut. We got 3 clips from Bakhmut. One of them was kind of around the front lines. The other 2 were rear line videos of Ukrainian drone attacks. And so moving on into those first, we got to see that another Zoo Park counter-battery radar system, or an anti-battery radar system, was destroyed today by a HIMARS in the area around Bakhmut. We're going to have to be muting that, but you can see the Zoo Park right there. And it doesn't really look like a zoo or a park, but the Ukrainians are about to park their zoo into that thing. So there goes the Zoo Park. And I know a lot of y'all are thinking, that line didn't even make any sense. And no, it didn't. I'm just trying to make the words work. But we can see the Zoo Park parking by this tree line here. The Russians wandering around outside of it. And the Ukrainians, of course, gathering telemetry data to bring in the artillery. The first round air bursts over the Zoo Park. And the Zoo Park is destroyed. That what looks like a second hit, and that one certainly took out the Zoo Park. And look, Matthew, it's the pet shark. We can see the Zoo Park burning down there, and it appears that that counter-battery radar is down and out of business. And we can see it continuing to burn. And that thing is done for. With that kind of fire, there's no way in hell that this thing is going to be surviving. And so with that, that's the end of that clip. But of course, great to see that the Ukrainians were able to destroy another incredibly rare and highly expensive Zoo Park battery around Bakhmut today. Moving on to the area of Klinove, we also saw that Russian artillery was destroyed here as well today. Several D-20 and D-30 cannons. Okay, that sounds copyrighted. We can see that this was done by the 30th Brigade. There's the first D-30, and it's gone. Immediately. Here's the 3RK, and it's gone. Immediately. And here's the D-20, and it's gone. Immediately. And there's another one. And guess what? It's gone. Immediately. Another D-20? May you even say it? It's gone. Immediately. Here we can see the KAMAZ truck being hit by the Ukrainian drone. And that's the end of the clip. And of course, great to see the 30th Brigade was able to get off some pretty choice hits in the area around Bakhmut today, hitting some of Russia's rear-line vehicles and support equipment. Moving on from that and up into the area of the northern flank, we also saw the 80th Air Assault Brigade in operation around Bakhmut in pictures. We can see right here a Ukrainian soldier with an AK-74 and a really cool looking skull mask. Epic. In the next picture, we can also see a guy with face paint. Pretty interesting, pretty neat. Not a lot of people use face paint in Modern Warfare, or really in any kind of warfare throughout history, except for, you know, in certain instances. I know a lot of people are going to bring those up, but not often.
Is that paint?
Yeah, that's paint.
That's some thick paint. Very brown.
That's some, man, that's some of that Amber Heard paint right there. I mean, you know,
using that nature.
Man, call this guy a bedsheet because Amber Heard must have dropped by with that kind of face paint.
Oh,
I'm just kidding.
dear. I'm telling you.
Goodness.
But we can, I'm telling you.
Oh, man, I'm telling you. But we can see some Ukrainians loading up into an MRAP in this picture. And then in the last one, we can just see a couple of Ukrainian soldiers standing by, most likely receiving orders to go do something somewhere. But still, really cool to see some pictures of the 80th Brigade in action. And of course, hopefully they will have some good luck on the battlefield here in the next few days and be able to either inflict some heavy damages against the Russians or push them back. Moving on out of the Bakhmut area and further on south into Marinka in the Donetsk region, we saw some very interesting pictures today that someone has done a lot of digging to find. These are pictures of Marinka before the war and during the war. And these are very bizarre because it shows you what the streets looked like then and now. This is what the street looked like before the beginning of the war in 2022. This is what it looks like today, the exact same street. Moving on into the next one, we can also see the same picture again, and then we can see a different area of Marinka where we can see the highway. You can see it right here, and we can see the buildings, of course, completely destroyed, and the area doesn't even look like it once did. It's completely unrecognizable. And moving on into the next picture, we can once again see that in a similar area, the trees that even line the roads have been destroyed down to their stumps. They don't even exist. They're gone. And then in the last picture, we can see another part of Marinka as it existed before the war and as it exists now. This is a bit of a reminder to everyone that these wars are, of course, incredibly devastating. And one thing to keep in mind is that Ukrainian soldiers have been fighting in the area of Marinka since the beginning of the war in the form it's in right now in 2022, that the city has practically been leveled by shelling from Russian forces. This is what the Russians turn every single Ukrainian town into, is piles of rubble like these. They're not even recognizable from the piles of rubble that they once were. And so moving on from that bit of news in the Donetsk region, which I just thought was very interesting to see, and once again gives a little bit of an idea why the Ukrainians fight so hard, so that way the devastation doesn't continue to reach the rest of the country through the war. And moving on down into the area of Konstantinivka, we also saw a Ukrainian drone grenade drop in this area. This was done by the 11th Brigade of the Ukrainian National Guard. We're going to be muting that. I don't know what that is. But we can see the drone coming on into the Russian position. And... Oh, it missed?
Oh, my.
Oh, my. Well, it didn't miss that time.
Oh,
wait a minute. Never mind. It was a bomb drop. See, it drops the bomb right there, and then it pulls up and flies off. So it was one of the bomber drones, not the kamikaze. And that's why we saw that. Very accurate, though. They were really accurate with that and hit it dead on the nail. And so with that, that's the end of that clip. Of course, wonderful to see. And we're now going to be moving on from the news in the Donetsk area for the large part, and we're now going to be moving on towards the village chain. We got to see a picture today of a BTR-4 advancing in the area, and while the Ukrainians are largely using a decent amount of Western equipment, we can still see a very large amount of older Soviet equipment or Ukrainian homemade equipment, like these two BTR-4s. Hopefully they have a good time on the battlefield and stay safe. Of course, the BTR-4s have been produced in larger numbers throughout the war, and this is a massive unit of them that we're seeing right here. And so with that, that's the end of that clip, and moving on into our next one, we also saw some footage from about a couple of days ago when the village was being liberated completely, but it's showing the Russian garrison that was defeated days ago, and footage that we have not seen up until today. This was taken by the 1st Separate Marine Infantry Battalion as they were taking the town of Verozhine, along with the 36th Naval Infantry Brigade. And we can see the intro cards. And, dude, that is the boar's head cheese right there.
It really is. They have an anchor behind it. Are we about to see something naval related?
Man, you're about to get anchored down on boar's head. You know what I mean? But
Man.
Man, I'm telling you. And we're going to be muting that. That's copyrighted. I know it. And we can see the Russians wandering around. This is on the very outskirts of Energodar. Actually, those might be Ukrainians because they were firing into that outpost pretty quickly.
Somebody said Amber Turd.
Man, oh man, I'm telling you, she gets no respect around here. And we can see more soldiers coming forward. We don't really know whose side they're on. I think they may be Ukrainian soldiers clearing out the bunkers. We can now see the infantry group moving on into the next dugout. These may actually be the Ukrainians in the 1st Brigade, and it appears that they're moving on into the next outpost to clear that one as well. And now everyone's saying that that thing is a wolf's head. It looks like a boar's head to me, but I'll take y'all's word on it. It's probably a wolf. We can see them lobbing a grenade into the outpost here, and then the grenade explodes. And so this is the Ukrainians that are clearing out some of the last Russian positions on the outskirts of Energodar. We now see them firing into the outpost and getting a pretty wide spread on that. And we can see them continuing to clear out the outpost, continuing to fire into it. And the video clip continues as they are still clearing out the outpost. And we can now see that a large amount of time has passed and the whole entire unit is now moving on to the next outpost to clear or up into an offensive position. And there they go, disappearing into the tree line. Kind of like how the homeless guys on the side of the highway do at the end of the night. They just kind of disappear into the tree line. But still, pretty nice to see. And with that, that's the end of the clip. But absolutely incredible to see the 1st Separate Marine Infantry Battalion conducting that little offensive in the area and making sure to wipe out the Russians from Energodar. Moving a little bit further down the lines, almost halfway to Robotyne, we saw around Poltavka today a kamikaze attack being conducted by Ukrainian forces onto the Russians, and it appears to have been a fairly successful one. Boop. And another one. Boop. And you thought that wasn't enough? Like, zoink Scoob, I think we have a pickup. Ruh-roh, Raggy! Pickup truck! But we can see it hitting the UAZ. That thing's gone. A burning pile of flame. We can also see that vehicle getting hit as well. This tank getting hit. That's a lot of damage. But wait, there's more. You can see them flying this one into the back of a Scooby-Doo van. Like, zoink Scoob, he's done this voice a million times. Ruh-roh, Raggy, voice fatigue. But anyways, that's the end of that clip, and great to see the Ukrainian FPV drones have been doing such good work in those parts of the front. We're now going to be moving on into Robotyne, which has had the largest amount of clips and videos coming out today, showing what has been happening here over about the past 24 hours. And it does appear that the Ukrainians are still having a fairly successful counteroffensive in this area. But before we get into the video footage that we got today, I think it's very important to circle back to the Ka-52 that was shot down here the other day. And it appears that the ejection seat actually worked. We got a very close-up film of the Ka-52 being hit, and we can actually see that there is a chute that successfully ejected from the Ka-52. The Ka-52 is up front. We can see it get hit, and we can see that little streak of smoke that we saw from very far away the other day. And
wow, I think it's falling like a rock.
There's the chute. But what's most important, like, yeah, the Ka-52 is falling like a rock because the rotors are gone. It doesn't even have lift, but there's a chute. So the ejection seats do work.
But the rotors are still spinning.
No.
That helicopter that was heading toward the ground, it still had rotors spinning.
Well, yeah, because there was 2 of them. There was a Mi-35 back there and the Ka-52 up here. This one ejects, rotors are gone, so it falls to the ground like a stone. and then this one hits the deck because the helicopter in front of it just got shot down. But pretty interesting to see, nevertheless. And moving on from that clip and into the next one, we also saw that the Russians attempted to recover that pilot that was able to successfully eject. And that also confirms that the Ka-52's ejection seats don't just work in theory, they actually can work in practice, at least for one of the pilots. And so here's the additional footage that we got of the Russian recovery crews trying to come out and take care of the situation. We can see the Ka-52 burning in the field still. We don't know where the pilots are at this moment. And we can see a Russian helicopter pretty much riding down the road. It's not even flying above the ground. It's driving.
It seriously looks like it's driving down the road. It really does.
Dude, that thing right now is going. Dude, they're like, drive, Blade, drive! It's a helicopter! Don't let that limit you. But we can now see the Mi-8 that has come over into the area and has landed, and it appears that they're picking up someone. We don't know if that's one of the pilots, though. And we now see the Mi-8 or the Mi-17 lifting off. Burning wreckage, literally just right over there in the distance. Right there. And there goes the Mi-8 after recovering some people from the field. And you can also see the nose cone right there of the Ka-52, confirming that that is the same helicopter. And so with that's the end of that clip, but very interesting to see that the Russians actually put through a little bit of effort to recover one of the pilots. We rarely ever, in fact, we've never seen that in the war. So it does appear that apparently helicopter pilots are becoming so rare, and the helicopters are also becoming so rare that they're going out of their way to attempt to save either of them if it's possible. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into our next clip in Robotyne, where we saw some of the continued fighting in the area. The Ukrainians have been doing quite well at this, as far as we've seen. And so, here's the clip. And this came from just 2 days ago. The Ukrainians are getting up. It appears that they were sitting alongside a armored personnel carrier, maybe a Bradley. Yep, it's a Bradley. Now we hear some gunfire coming in. We see the Ukrainian getting alongside the Bradley. We see him looking around for something. You see them standing by and sitting there. Also, some of y'all may be thinking that this is a wheel of the BMP. That's actually the wheel of a the wheel of a Bradley. That's actually a road wheel of a BMP right there. Most likely a BMP-1. We now hear some gunfire. We're not really getting to see much of it, but the cameraman is now getting back up. We now see him looking around and firing. It appears that he grabbed an RPG to fire. We now see him laying low as gunfire continues. We can't really see much of it, though we see some twigs right now. We now see him still sitting here, waiting. We can still hear gunfire. Maybe even some rounds snapping back over their head. And that's the end of the clip. And so with that, we are now going to be moving on into our next one, where we also saw some pretty close-up fighting, or close quarters fighting, in the area of Robotyne today as well. This was also captured on GoPro by Ukrainian soldiers in the area. We can see the Ukrainians advancing.
Does Ukraine have a lot of snakes?
I don't really know. I don't think they do, but I could be wrong. We now see them
Seeing them
firing.
go through that like high grass like that makes me paranoid about snakes, but I don't know if they have any.
Oh, they do, but I don't know how many. Like, I don't know if it's a lot of them or a little, but we see them firing their rocket launcher there and now running back to the infantry. And we now see the infantry firing through the village. And it now appears that they may be trying to shift over to... Well, actually, they're firing an RPG. But now they're shifting over. The video's cut, and they're now in another part of the village. We now see them continuing to fire into the distance at Russian forces.
Brush said, yeah, they're called orcs. I'm talking about the snakes that lay flat.
Actually, the snakes of the conscription officers did all get fired last week. We now see them whipping out the AK. Here's some firefight continuing. And firing a rifle grenade there. They're continuing to keep up fire. We can see the rifle grenadier here preparing to fire another rifle grenade. And there it goes, off into the distance. And with that's the end of the clip. And it is, of course, very interesting to see how the firefights have been continuing around Robotyne today. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also saw a very lucky Ukrainian tank. And when I mean lucky, it's lucky. I mean, very lucky, I gotta say. And so, here is the clip. What we were watching is a Ukrainian tank firing into the distance at a Russian-occupied village. Tank's firing and driving, but right there, right about here, it did something. It ran over an anti-tank mine, and then the anti-tank mine didn't blow up. It blew up after the tank was well away from it. We can now see the tank conducting a turn, and there goes the mine.
Oh, jeez, man, that was a big explosion for a mine.
That was huge. A pretty actually run-of-the-mill anti-tank mine. But usually we don't see the full scale of their explosion because it's blowing up under a tank. But when you see these things out in the open, they have amazing amounts of firepower. A lot of damage can, of course, be inflicted on a tank. They're meant to knock them out. But what was pretty nice is that it was a Russian mine, so they just run over it. And then the mine goes, wait a minute, do I blow up? Let me read the manual. Oh yeah, I blow up right about now. And then it blows up. You know, the Ukrainians were thinking that they had to be the luckiest tankers alive that day. And they probably were, because the chances of an anti-tank mine blowing up in a delayed form like that is incredibly rare. In fact, it's nearly impossible most of the time. They just don't blow up at all, or they blow up immediately. So seeing one even blow up delayed like this is a 1 in a million kind of chance. It's so that we're now going to be moving on behind the rear lines, where we also saw some Ukrainians riding through the countryside in the area, trying to make their way up towards the front lines. All right, we're going to be muting that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, baby, give me that music, Blit.
Play that beautiful music, please.
Why did you stop playing that beautiful music?
Man, if Gordon Ramsay was a composer.
I was talking about that SpongeBob thing, you know, when Squidward used SpongeBob as a clarinet, and then the king said, "Why did you stop that beautiful music?" I was talking about that. But anyways, we can see the Ukrainians riding in the back, of course, riding down a fairly bumpy road as the dirt roads come. And with that, that's the end of the clip. But of course, great to see that the Ukrainians are still moving reinforcements and forces throughout the area. Moving on over into Lokovy, we also saw some Ukrainian forces on patrol around there as well. And we're going to be muting that, but we can see them looking down the street, of course, on patrol. It's a very short clip, but just giving a little bit of a look or a glimpse into the life and actions of the Ukrainian forces on this part of the Zaporizhzhia front line. Moving on from that clip, we are now going to be moving on out of the southern front, everything that's been happening there, and into Energodar, because there was a really interesting little event that happened there today. The Russian police got hit by a kamikaze drone. And so, without further ado, here is the clip. When you see the drone flying on in, trying to make sure that the descent rate's good. And we can see them trying to hover the drone over to the appropriate building. And now we can see them going for the police office. And we don't know if it hit the meeting, but it did hit the police office building. And it looks a lot like a Khrushchevka. That is the police department. But with that, that's the end of that clip right there. And hopefully the damage that was caused was going to cause some bureaucratic shortfalls for the Russian police forces inside of the city of Energodar. Moving on from that, we are now going to be moving on up to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 541 of the war. And so, without further ado, here is the speech. Speech!
Dear Ukrainians, I wish you
No.
Oh.
No. No. All right, there we go.
Dear Ukrainians, I wish you good health.
Dear Ukrainians, I wish you health. Thanks. But
Сьогодні п'ятниця, але такий тиждень, що зарано підбивати підсумки робочих днів. Готуємо потужні речі для України, посилення нашої держави, наших воїнів. Сьогодні загалом цього тижня саме таке завдання головне. Зброя для наших воїнів, нові можливості для нашої оборони, нові пакети підтримки від наших партнерів. Ми робимо все, щоб напередодні Дня Незалежності нашої держави можна було сказати, що Україна зробила ще один крок до кола найбільш міцних держав світу. Наша команда зараз працює особливо інтенсивно. Новини для України побачите. Готуємо їх із сусідами в ЄС, а ще у тих регіонах Європи, де нашої співпраці з державами поки було недостатньо. І, звичайно, із такими нашими європейськими партнерами, з якими ми вже разом не раз доводили, що європейське лідерство у захисті свободи має глобальне значення. До речі, важливі дипломатичні успіхи маємо вже й за цей тиждень. Декларація Сімки щодо безпекових гарантій України. Станом на сьогодні вже 18 держав приєднались. Формула миру, вже 63 дипломатичні місії працюють заради реалізації пунктів формули. Дуже важливо, що формула миру поступово об'єднує світову більшість на основі нашої поваги до міжнародного права і статуту ООН. Європейський Союз. Максимально стараємось, щоб Україна цього року була готова до відкриття переговорів про членство. Сьогодні почав день зі змістовної селекторної наради, як і завжди, фронт. Перше питання. Доповіді військових, ситуація на передовій, доповіді урядовців щодо постачання зброї та боєприпасів, доповідь Служби безпеки України щодо воєнкомів та колаборантів. Окремо заслухав доповідь прикордонної служби, МЗС, розвідки щодо ставлення до наших громадян-переселенців, які перебувають в різних країнах, а також щодо візових режимів. Того, з чим реально стикаються громадяни України у візовому питанні. Керівники за напрямками отримали відповідні завдання. Права громадян України мають бути гарантовані. Ще одне. Наступний тиждень – це час важливих для України заходів. Жодного дня підготовки ми не втратимо. Жодного результату для України не упустимо. Щодня ми працюємо, щодня додаємо Україні сили. І я дякую кожному і кожній, хто діє так само для України. Тільки силу. Слава усім нашим воїнам, слава кожному і кожній, хто працює заради перемоги, заради свободи та незалежності. Слава Україні!
And
Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on the 541st day of the war, and that is the end of the halftime show. We are now going to be moving on into the next part of the stream, and probably the funnest one, which is when we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And so, without further ado, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so moving into our final question and poll segment of the night. Our first poll says Ukrainian pilots will begin training this month, and are F-16s now a real possibility? It looks like 75% said yes, now it is, and it's going to happen. 10% said, I think the U.S. will come around eventually. 9% said it's a lost cause, it's over 1 year away at best, and 7% said unsure. And on the F-16s, I hate to sound like a downer, I really do, because I want to be positive about it. But I think at this point, the U.S. has made it very clear its intention is to stall, and I still think that's the case. And the training should have started a while back, and it just started now, which is good. I'm not trying to write that off, but it is late. I think that maybe the U.S. might come around eventually, but right now, my hopes are pretty low, because at best, it will take at least a year for the pilots to actually get those jets to be able to fly them. And in a year, a lot can change in this war. It could be over by then. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to be honest. I think that the F-16, when it arrives, will be a fairly huge help to the Ukrainian army in the field. But it does appear that the United States is trying to find ways to delay the delivery of F-16s as best as possible. So, while they may get there, I'm not really sure if it's even going to be by the beginning of next year. And that's kind of a little aggravating, but everyone knows how that goes. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right. And our next poll says, should Ukraine continue to increase attacks on civilian areas of Moscow with drones? 65% said yes, it's a good strategy. 13% said it sounds sketchy, but I'm unsure. 11% said unsure, and 10% said no, that's not acceptable. And on this one, I got to say, I'll justify it with this. Ukraine technically should not and cannot do that because it would be violating some provisions like the Geneva Conventions to attack civilians. But if Ukraine was not involved with it and the drones attacked Moscow anyway, I don't think there'd be anything wrong with that because we don't know where they came from. So if they somehow found their way to Moscow without Ukraine's involvement, that is what it is. I'll leave it at that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say whatever happens at this point, as far as the Russians, well, whatever happens to the Russians at this point, they've been doing everything under the sun that could be considered a war crime for a year and a half at this point. So if anything even starts to pale in comparison, it's almost a tit for tat at this point. So you can't really even go, oh my God, that's terrible. You know, it's like, oh, so it wasn't terrible when it happened to thousands of Ukrainians for, a year and a half. But now that it happens to the Russians for one day, now that's too much. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and with that being said, that is our last poll for now. So we are moving on back into our no cap, straight up facts, 100%. And with that being said, I was going to say something else, but it was going to be cringe. And moving on to our first super chat of the last segment, it goes to Doom Digi, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much for that support. They said, thanks guys, and I've been here since day one, and I have to have my Enforcer bless you for all you do for Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on rolling, Doom Digi. And thank you so much for being here since day one. That means a lot to us, and I gotta thank you so much for always sticking with us and being with us for such a long time. I thank you so much for saying you have to have this channel, and I also thank you for supporting this channel as well, because the channel relies on y'all support, and we're greatly appreciative to every single person who does support the channel, because y'all make it possible for us to keep this thing going each and every night. And so thank you so much for the kind words, and thank you for appreciating what we've been able to do. And it's not really what we have been able to do as just Matthew and me on this channel in support for Ukraine. Is really just that we have been the place that every single person in the LSA has come together to help out Ukraine. And I think that's one of the most amazing things that one can imagine, is everything that the entirety of the Lee Spring Army and the Enforcer channel has done to get this done. Absolutely incredible from start to finish. And I also have to say, I thank you so much for the massive amount of support as well, because folks like you who support this channel help us to keep this thing running. And it always means a lot to us that folks do support it, because it's the only way the channel keeps alive. And I say that a lot. I say that constantly, but it really is. And we always want folks to know that we're greatly appreciative, because y'all keep this thing, y'all keep the live streams ad-free, sponsor-free, and every kind of free, and y'all allow us to do on the live streams what we want. We don't have to bend our knee to YouTube AdSense to try and promote our videos. y'all wouldn't believe that that's actually how that works. You have to turn on the ads, otherwise the videos just don't get promoted. We found that out a long time ago, because once we turn on the ads, the videos will get like 170,000 views. If the ads are off, they only get like 40,000 or 30,000, and they don't even promote it to our subscribers. So then you have to turn them on. But on the streams, you don't have to, because they have a really weird, wonky way of working that. So I got to thank you so much once again for supporting this and helping us to keep this thing rolling. Because if it wasn't for folks like you who send in super chats, we wouldn't be able to be here every single night like we are. And I thank you so much for appreciating what we do while I stutter my way through that.
Whoa,
What happened? But with that, thank you so much once again, Doom Digi, for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Just Chillin', who put in a $20 donation, and no comment to address, sadly, but thank you very much, Just Chillin', for that support. And Just Chillin'. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much for the support, Just Chillin'. Just Chillin' has just been chillin' every single night on this show. And I gotta thank you so much for supporting this channel as well tonight, because folks like you are helping us to keep this thing rolling. Y'all help us to keep the lights on. Y'all help us to be able to pay the bills. Y'all help us to be able to pay for law school tuition, books, gas, and everything else. Every single fund that that one could imagine, you're helping out. And so thank you so much once again. And I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Psyops. And thank you very much, Psyops, for that support. He says, fun improv game. Uh-oh, let's check the rules of this game before I read them off. Let's see. What? Keep it clear. Oh. I sadly can't read that one off, Sibes. I don't know why you do this, because I feel bad for not reading off something. But he said fun improv game, and the improv game is X-rated, so I can't read that off. But thank you very much, Sibes, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
Well, I still thank you for the support, Sibes. Of course, a channel legend. And sadly, we can't read it off because it is X-rated. We try and keep it PG as best as we can, but we will make sure to get a live chat in honor of the super chat. And I got to thank you so much once again, Psyops, for always being here with us and always helping this channel to keep on rolling. Interestingly enough, saw someone earlier saying in the live chat, and Matthew actually responded to him, they said, you care too much. And that was in response to thanking people for their support. The reason why I thank people is because there is a lot of channels out there who receive super chats and they don't thank people who support their channel. And I think that's a huge insult to those people, because these folks, every single one of y'all work a job, and every single one of y'all work every single day at that job to be able to save up your money to do what you want and to be able to live your life. And out of everything that you could have spent your money on, you were spending your money on a channel like ours to support us and make this our job, so that way we can do this each and every day. And I find that to be an honor that every single time it happens, I don't even feel like we deserve it. And so I'm always wanting to make sure to just overflow with the thanks and the support, because y'all could have done anything with y'all's money. Y'all could have gone and gotten, hell, a video game. Y'all could have rented a movie. Anything. You could have done anything you wanted, and yet you've supported this channel. And we always want to let people know that we're incredibly thankful for that, because I don't like the idea of just pissing on people's support. That was their hard-earned dollars, and I think that's just incredibly rude to act like it's nothing. And I've seen channels who act like it's nothing, and to that I just am always completely appalled, because it's like, these people enjoy your channel so much, they would be willing to give you money so that way you could do this as a job and be able to support yourself doing it. And then they just go, oh, $100, yeah, thanks. And then they just move on. And I'm like, that's just so rude. And so that's why I always do it. And that's why I'm always dedicated, no matter how many of them there are, no matter how small or how large the amount is, the thanks is always the same. Because $1 to one person may be $500 to another. And I always want y'all to know that we appreciate each and every one of y'all. That's just a big thing to me. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And while I have that very bad voice crack right there, and could you reread that one again, Matthew?
Which one did that come from?
I don't know.
Wasn't that from Psyops?
Oh yeah, it was. We were going to a live chat, actually. So with that, what do we got for a live chat?
All right, and the live chat question goes to Sea Dog Pirate, who says, do y'all know anything about Ukraine getting F-18s?
We've heard a little bit. It's not going to happen, probably. But the Australians are retiring a lot of F-18s, and there was a moment in time where they were considering sending all of those F-18s to Ukraine. But that's never really made it beyond the drawing board. It was like a suggestion, and then it didn't make it past that point. So, unfortunately, no. We don't know if they're getting F-18s. The offer's out there, though, and it's still kind of standing. And so, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again, Sives, for the support. And, of course, helping this channel to keep on running and sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Duncan VR, who puts in a very generous $40 donation. And thank you very much, Duncan, very much for the continued support and also being a longtime channel legend with his whole cult of personality around the animal noises. He says, "Ba mooba, moo, moo, ba, ba, bots lead the show." I agree. And now meow rough. Matthew mentioned snake, ba, ba, but he didn't mention make the snake noise. Man, a snake coughing. Enforcer, call him out. Meow, woof, elephant sound. Oh, man, I'm telling ya. Bow, bow, meow, no respect.
Call
and now, Duncan, now I have the privilege of going through and sifting out the bots when they get angry because they heard somebody say some animal noises. But thank you very much for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much for the support as well, Duncan VR, and helping this channel keep on running. And, let's see here. Call him out, call him out, call him out.
Romania.
Man, what the hell's on Twitter? And then I pull it up and I don't see anything like that. And it's like,
It's unintentional.
It was totally.
You know, Twitter, or now called X, ironically called X, actually bases searches on your search history. So you get suggestions based on what you've looked up before. So that's kind of interesting.
Oh man. That's something I didn't know. Oh man. And like, remember that, Matthew, you said something about that before the stream, and I was like, really? So I went on my second screen and I tried to find, like, is that something we can't pull up tonight on air if we need to? No, I didn't see anything like that. If y'all know what I'm talking about, you know. But I didn't see anything like that on our screen at all, period. So it's like, that's a little interesting. But anyways, call him out. But that's really all I can take away from that. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, Duncan VR, and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you make this thing possible. And I gotta thank you so much once again for throwing in the animal noises, because the animal noises are always greatly appreciated on this channel, and they are a tradition. If they weren't a tradition, what would they be? I don't know. Well, they would have to be a tradition. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And Angry Penguin said, "Snake coughing, LMAO." Man, what if a snake, you see it going like, crawling along or whatever, slithering along, and the thing stops and goes, and like pulls out like a little shot of Jack or something and like swigs it.
Man, I don't know about that snake. I don't know what snake has Hennessy, but I'll take it for what it is.
Man, that snake is busting.
Man, that snake spinning the block, getting the Glock. You know what I mean? But anyways, with that, we are on.
That snake's got that dog in him.
Man, that snake got that dog in. Dude, that snake doesn't go. It goes. But anyways, with that, we're on.
Put that freak snake on a leash, man.
Okay, that sounded weird. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
Now, see, you made that weird. That wasn't weird, just me saying that. But anyways, let's move on from that. And moving on to our next one, we have a 10 from Junebug72, who says, "Good evening," and one for the live chat, and slow Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support, Junebug72, and thank you for being here tonight. Good evening. And we will make sure to take one from the live chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Drunky Monkey, who says, "Is there a chance that Muscovites will get used to the drone attacks on the daily?"
I think they probably are already, but it's still going to be a bit of a shock to them and a change in their lives that will probably be demoralizing. But I have to say that while the Ukrainians kind of striking in that area as a tit for tatting, I hope they don't do that often or much, because that is a little bit questionable. I completely understand where they're coming from. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to John, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, John, for that support. He says, "I think Sea Baby should be named Bam Bam."
Bam Bam, like from the Flintstones? Like
I guess so.
Man, Bam Bam. Dude, I hated that thing, man. Like that kid was annoying on that show. But anyways, I thank you for the support. And maybe it should be called that, because it's certainly going to be as annoying to the Russians as the Bam Bam from the Flintstones was to me as a kid. I could not stand that baby. But with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Clydesdale in 1971, who puts in a 10 and says, add this to the Vitamin Fund. Stay healthy and great work, guys, and Slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support to the Vitamin Fund, because folks like you are helping me to hopefully get over whatever the hell is wrong with me. I am burning hot right now. I have a headache, and my nose and throat is incredibly dry. So don't really know what's going on. I woke up and felt perfectly fine today, so hopefully it's nothing bad. But thank you so much for the Vitamin Fund, because I will be trying to get some vitamins. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Neil Vizanant, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Neil, for that support. He says, wow, even Russian landmines are stupid. And I didn't even know that that was physically possible, but apparently the incompetence, the Russian military breaks the laws of physics itself. LMAO. Laughing my ass off.
Man, I'd be laughing my ass off too. Oh man, and Junkie Monkey just said you need coffee. But anyways, moving on from that. I gotta thank you so much for the support. And I'd have to agree with you. Russian landmines, even a stupid. How the hell does a mine that doesn't even have a delayed fuse built into it have a delayed fuse? Answer that for me. There's no way to answer it. It was either a dud or it wasn't. And this thing was somewhere in the middle. I don't even know how in the hell that happened, but pretty wild to see nevertheless. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And I would have to agree with your assessment of the mine and its competence wholeheartedly. And so, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from CK Bold, who says take a live chat question. And CK Bold ordered the number 1, the usual. And we'll go to the live chat right now. And it is going to Wondering, who says, do you think it's possible that China would seize eastern parts of Russia if they see Russia get weak enough?
I have a feeling they probably would not. There's not really a lot strategically valuable to the Chinese in Russia, and also it will incur a decent amount of economic cost, and it'll be another minority ethnic group they'll have to deal with. They usually don't deal with them well, and it also takes a lot of time and money to do anything about that. So I have a feeling they probably would not do that. They would probably allow the Russians to continue to control the territory they have now and try and create a puppet out of the Russians, or create a colony, a resource colony out of them for future purposes. But I don't think they'll be taking any Russian land, in my opinion at least. That's what I think. So with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that. Well, actually, I thank CK Bull for the support and sponsoring the live chat, and I hope we were able to answer that live chat fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to the B Night 3, who puts in a $5 donation and says, for the Flame Grilled Barbecue Tofu Fund, and put your sauce before throwing into fire for a nice char.
Man, that sounds good. I'm not even going to lie. But I got... Man. Shit, man. But still, I got...
That's the one tofu. Tofu
you
or
mean
whatever.
Tofu, not tofu?
Yeah.
It's not tofu.
I don't know why I was reading as tofu. Oh man, my goodness. Just ignore that, please.
Well, I mean, I don't know if we can. Oh, man, I'm telling you.
I'm telling you, I get no respect around here.
Oh, man,
I mispronounce a word. Now it's time to flame grill me. I'm the barbecue tonight. Oh, man, I'm telling you. Put me on the grill.
I'm telling you, you're going to be like that. Whopper, juicy, Whopper, triple. You know, you're going to be like that in a minute in the live chat. But,
man.
Oh, man.
Whopper.
But what was the live chat again? I mean, super chat?
Put your favorite sauce on it before throwing it onto the fire for a nice char.
And I gotta thank you so much for the support to the Tofu Fund. I actually haven't had tofu before, so I'd have to try it to see if I like it. But I do thank you so much for the support, and I will have to try that, because on top of everything else, I am feeling kind of hungry. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much for supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing running, so that way we can have tofu, or tofu, as people are now saying in the chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Bartimeus Carbelou, who puts in a $5 donation and says, you say fake call from Ukraine, but I believe it's Putin scaring Russians to grab more political power, or perhaps make an excuse off someone. And I'll tell you what, if it was a fake call, Ukraine probably took the top award for the best prank call, or the most severe one in history. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that is fairly... That's fairly bizarre if it was a fake call. That would be pretty nuts. And I'd have to agree with Matthew. That would have to be one of the prank calls of the century. Also, Matthew, something interesting, because I think we're probably going to be getting to that here in a moment. It's something fairly interesting to me that there was someone out there who said that there was going to be a drone attack overnight, but the info that they got wrong is that it was a naval drone attack. They still had the information correct that there was going to be a drone attack nevertheless. So, once again, on the OPSEC side of things, OPSEC needs to be insured because that's still an OPSEC violation, saying that there is going to be an attack of any kind on a specific time and date. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
I plead with you people, please, no politics. Because politics is so nasty. It's divisive, however you want to say it. And I see a lot of folks trying to bring up politics tonight. Let's please keep that out of the live chat. Let's stick to Ukraine because that's what it's all about on this channel is Ukraine and the war. So let's stick with that, please. And moving on to our next super chat question, we have a $5 donation from Sarah. And thank you very much, Sarah, for that support. And she says, I didn't pay much attention last night, but now that it actually effed things up, I want to know who blew OPSEC.
Oh, well, actually,
there's your question.
That's what we were just talking about. So I thank you for the support, but can't really say who did it. Because, and I'll explain a little bit of the reason why. Because I like to be honest with y'all, and while sometimes the honesty is a little bit brutal, it is what it is. Correcting people out there on YouTube is something fairly hard to do, because people don't listen to criticism. One, that's one thing I know, and two, it's not really any of my business to be the policeman of YouTube. Some people think it is, and to those people, they're blithering idiots. I don't even, and also it's very arbitrarily enforced from YouTuber to YouTuber. If they like someone, they'll get a pass, but if they don't like someone, then they don't get a pass. Or they can do the same things. Like, for example, one person out there wants to continuously criticize us for receiving super chats, but then they also receive super chats too. The policing is very haphazard. Another thing I don't want to do is give the exact name of the person. I'm sure many people will probably say their name anyways in the live chat because they can. Is that I don't want to go beefing with other YouTubers. Honestly, I just kind of want to do my thing on reporting the war, support Ukraine, and not really even bother with most other YouTubers. It's honestly dealing with other YouTubers eventually is drama filled. Due to one thing or another. And I've just gotten to the point where I don't really want to deal with other YouTubers, whether it be guests or anything, unless they're completely out of my category. Like for example, I gave a plug to Ocean Liner Designs last night because I think his channel's great, but it covers maritime stuff. So that's kind of different to me. To plug something like that because they're not, like that guy's pretty genuine and he also makes great content. It's not really like it's like this dude's going to sit there like everyone else does and that might be my competitor, I'm going to try and steal viewers from him, or I'm going to try and hurt their income so that way they can't do this as a job, and all that crap. So yeah, that's kind of why I don't want to call him out, because that's going to become a huge ordeal and then it's going to be a beef and everything. And honestly, I feel like it should be more so on the community, the Ukrainian war community, than me to call them out. So I don't really want to be the one to call that shot. And so I hope that does address that fairly well. And I thank you so much for the support. And that's the one thing that we always want to be honest about is when you'll ask questions, like, why don't we joke around as much in certain ways? Or why don't we do this? Or why don't we do that? It's for those reasons. It's really because I actually explain the reasons to y'all. I don't try and hide anything. I don't try and act like, everything's cheery or everything's terrible. I'm just going to tell it to y'all the way it is. And the more and more we've done this, I've got to be honest, the more and more negative my outlook has become, mostly on the YouTube world and other YouTubers, because it's a really weird place. Like, not to get into other stuff, but some third party was getting dragged into some drama that we're having with someone else, and so instead of discovering, like they did, that it was lies and they were being pitted against us by that group, instead they decide to cut communications entirely with us, although there was no reason to, you know, stuff like that. And you just go, what the hell is this stuff? It makes no sense. It's pointless. And we don't even really need to talk to other YouTubers because we can just do our own thing. And a lot of y'all are pretty happy with that. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well again. And thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, also, by the way, folks, please don't question the politics rule, because I see some folks giving us some, I guess you could say, a lashback for it. It's going to stay in place no matter who rebels against it, so we're not changing it. And moving on to our next super chat, we have a $4 donation from Cat Chaser, who says, Enforcer, can you put your faces in the screen?
No.
That'd be tough to do.
I think
I'm going to try to cram my face into it.
And thank you for the support, but sadly, I physically cannot shove my head through the screen. Another reason why is because our podcast set actually was disassembled about a few weeks ago. Oh, what? Oh, God! No! You gotta level with them, but it was disassembled a few weeks ago because it was too much to do. It adds a whole third dimension, especially when we're switching cameras and stuff, and it makes it so much more difficult to do. And while we enjoyed doing it, it just wasn't worth the amount of work that was involved in trying to do those live podcasts. And it was also burning hot. Like, no matter how many times I tried to get something to cool down the area I was in, I was always sweating by the end of it and felt physically and mentally exhausted. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also I saw Jeff Lieberman say, enforce the rules, Enforcer Matt, no politics. And I don't know if I ever told y'all this, but when I went into Capello's, that pizza store, I think the guys are Italian, but I think there might be a Turkish guy in there as well. I'm not really sure. But when I went in, I accidentally used my Enforcer Matt email to place the order to go pick it up. And I walked in, the guy was like, oh, Enforcer Matt? And he's like looking like, sort of suspicious, like Enforcer, like, he was thinking about the Italian mob or something like that. I was like, yeah. And I just walked out with the pizza and I was like, oh, goodness. I hopefully didn't think I was like, in a mob or anything like that.
Hopefully so. I don't.
Enforcer wasn't following that whatsoever.
Yeah, I wasn't.
Okay.
I wasn't following that. I was looking at the live chat, and reading some of the live chats. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Cat Chaser, who puts in a 2. It says Ukraine. Let's see. I don't know what that means, to be totally honest, and it's scaring me for some reason. But thank you very much for the support. And with that, they put in another super chat. It's another $2 donation, and they said my 4th super chat since start. No thanks. See ya. I don't know what that means, but okay.
And see you. And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again for the support.
All right, and that was our last super chat for now. So we're moving on to our live chat questions, and we have the Morse code decoders of the stream. Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, and Paul Schultz. They said tonight's Morse code cipher says, who would have thought that Moscow would ever be evacuated? Glory to Ukraine, and long live the LSA.
And that's the sound of money. And y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. And who would have ever thought that any part of Moscow would have to be evacuated because of drone attacks? Not me. Not me. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you for deciphering that Morse code message for the 541st day of the war. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And our next question goes to Sprogut, who says, question for Enforcer Matt. Who pays for all the damage to Ukrainian property, etc., after the war ends? And that's a good question. That was for Enforcer Matt, so I'm going to answer that one real quick. So they said, who pays for all the damage? So the catch is, because I actually did take this in political science, and I didn't like it that much because it was based on just theory and not really real life, is in theory, the West will step in as a mediator after Russia loses, and whatever government is in place in Russia at the time, they will have to negotiate with the government of Ukraine to come up with some kind of reparations plan to pay off all the damages to the property, etc. And that could be tough because obviously there's going to be some resentment still in the Russian, population against the Ukrainians and the other way around as well. So it's going to be tough in practice to actually get them to pay for it. But in theory, we could. But it's going to be pretty tough to implement. But Enforcer, what say you?
It's most likely going to be investment firms and the Ukrainian government that ends up paying for the Ukrainian reconstruction, or it may actually be directly through Western governments like the United States. So that would be my answers to that question from what I've seen historically, in other wars. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Gabriel Mum, who says, if Russia would have chosen to prepare and attack Finland or Sweden instead of Ukraine, do you think they would have succeeded or managed better?
They probably wouldn't have succeeded up there either. I think they would have managed poorly whoever they attacked, because the Russian army is wholly incompetent, and even the Georgians in 2008 to 2009 gave the Russian army a run for its money during that 1 month to, well, actually, I believe that was actually a several month long war. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, because I don't think they would have succeeded anywhere. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and with that being said, believe it or not, we have the final question of the night in the spreadsheet. So, Enforcer, would you like to do the whole thing?
There's only one more?
That's it.
Damn, all right. Well, that wasn't any live chats at all, but we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Wandering, who says, if you and Enforcer could put yourselves in your ideal legal profession after school, what legal profession would you work in?
Well, I'm going to let Matthew answer that question first.
So for me, my goal is to go into private practice. That means open up my own firm with just me in it. And I'm not sure if the Enforcer wants to go into a joint firm or not, but I'd be open to that as well. But I would probably go into, most likely, definitely personal injury. Trying to decide on family law or not. I'm not sure if I'm going to go for that one or not, but maybe. And probably medical malpractice, and trying to think of the other one. I'm missing one. Yeah, tort law, obviously. And probably that's it off the top of my head. I feel like I'm forgetting one, though. But my goal is to go into business for myself. Or otherwise, you have to start at the bottom of a firm, which is tough, long hours, and somewhat low pay. So, Enforcer, what say you?
Well, if I was to do something, I would be a malpractice attorney, medical and attorney malpractice. I would be going around chopping heads off. Not literally, but metaphorically. Because there are a lot, well, I won't say that because, well, whoa, hey, easy now. But I would probably do those things. That's probably what I do. And so with that, I hope that it justices that fairly well. Probably wouldn't be an attorney too long, though. Probably just a few years, because I plan on moving towards the political sphere at that point. And also, some people are always going, oh, isn't that ironic? He wants to run for politics, but he doesn't get into politics. Yeah, because, I don't want to go and, I don't want to hear the same stupid arguments. Everyone has the same political beliefs nowadays. It's either political beliefs A or B. You have no options. There's no variety, and there's no new ideas out there. So I don't want to hear it. And on top of that, we're here to support Ukraine. We're not here to talk about the United States. I'm not here to hear the stupid arguments on gun control and abortion that have been heard a million times and have never done anything to fix anything. I don't want to hear it. That's my belief on it. I believe politics is something that shouldn't be talked about in most places. It should be talked about during election cycles, and that's about it, because who the hell cares beyond that? I don't want to hear about your political beliefs at a football game. I don't want to hear about it during the middle of a war in a foreign country that has nothing to do with domestic politics. I don't want to hear about politics while I'm sitting down eating with you. I don't want to hear them anywhere. I've heard them so much in my life. I don't care. It's a stupid thing to hear. I want to hear, yeah, your original points, on politics. Wow, I haven't heard that a million times. What are you repeating? CNN, Fox, who? It's old to me. I don't like it. So I'm not really wanting to talk about politics, although I want to go into it, because it's like, oh, come on. I mean, you could just talk about so many other interesting things instead of wasting everyone's time with the same political hoopla that everyone hears every day. And
also real quick, I saw someone mention, I don't know how I forgot to say this, but definitely criminal law as well. That's one of my most favorite areas of law, and I forgot to mention that one. I would definitely go into that. I find that to be the most fun area of law, and it's the one that everyone's most familiar with because you see it on TV every day. So also, I saw somebody else say something. Everybody's saying ambulance chaser. That's just proof that the lawyers have a bad reputation. But let's see. Somebody said, not something like civil rights. If a civil rights case came up that was a good one, I might pursue it, but I wouldn't specialize in that. I might specialize in defamation, if y'all know what I mean. That's somewhat of a good area of law, and I'm somewhat familiar with it, somewhat. But Enforcer, what say you? We also have another super chat, by the way.
Yeah, we do. I would say the civil rights law. Usually that's like a law firm kind of thing. And I'm not really a big fan of law firms either, because, it's like So hell, it's practically enslavement with a law firm. Like you sit there and you get crapped on by the higher up attorneys in the firm. You got to work unbelievable hours. You get no pay for what you're doing. You know, like, I don't get the idea of that. You know, I always think that it's just better to do things on your own. I didn't go and get a manager to run this YouTube channel, and a lot of people end up getting managers. I would never do that. Like, you know, you're the boss, you're the manager, you get things done. It's better that way. You don't have anyone to answer to. So that would be my belief on that. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we actually have a super chat to answer from Russ Rizzo, otherwise known as Russ the Rizzler. And so what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Russ Rizzo, who puts in a 5 and says, do you guys know fellow Behammer, Roy Wood Jr., one of the best fake newsmen ever? I never heard of that guy.
I've never heard of that guy, but I'll have to look into him because I always like myself a little bit of a look-see here and there into the news, but I'm just not really a big fan of the way most news is covered. You know, I already kind of went on the soapbox on that earlier, but I'm just, you know, not a big fan. And that's also one thing, you know, when people come in and they say their politics. There was someone in here tonight who just meant that they got to get their political opinions out. And I think it went on for like 30 minutes. And we try and be polite to these people, and we try and give them a moment. But, you know, it's like, do I want to hear your drivel? You know, like I get it if you have something new to say, you know, like, for example, on this war, you know, like a lot of YouTube channels actually have original stuff to say about that. So it's like, okay, good. But when people go around and they just repeat the same things that you've heard in the political world, it's just old. It's like you don't even have an original opinion. Why in the world do you feel like you have to have a right to say the same thing that everyone else has said? You know, it's like, hey, let me have my turn on the mic to say hello and then walk off. You know, it's like 10,000 people have already done that. It's not new anymore. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I think we are rounding out tonight's stream right now. I don't know.
We have one more.
Oh, all right. And so let's get to it. What happened?
Twice upon a time said DUI defense lawyer. Yes, sir. That's criminal law. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And also, by the way, not to get into the weeds on it, just got to say this because it's all fresh in my head now because of the first week of law school going by. And I'm happy it's Friday, by the way. Sort of a long week, even though it was interesting. That DUI, defense lawyer, and criminal law, all very fun. But the unfortunate part is I see a ton of people saying, oh, when you eventually get your license and stuff, you should come help me out with the case. I know you're saying in jest, but in reality, though, we're only going to be licensed to practice in Alabama. And that's probably the only place I'm going to practice because I'm not really wanting to move anywhere else. Unless your case is in federal court, then, you know, it had to be in Alabama. So if you want to come to Alabama and something happens, you let me know later on, about 3 years down the road. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I don't really have anything to add on to that. I think that was just
Are you going to take any cases?
Well, I don't know. Honestly, man, I feel so bad right now. I'm kind of out of it. So with that, I hope that addresses that somewhat well. And I think we're on to a $2 super chat from Neil Vizanon, who said nope, and that was correct for a few seconds. And so with that, I think we're going to have to round out tonight's stream right now because
and also we have a 2 from Margaret Hemsley who says, do your thing. We support you.
Oh, well, when in the world did that come in?
Early.
Oh, well, I thank you so much for the support, Margaret. And thank you for saying, do your thing. We try to do our thing. And hopefully we can continue to. And of course, with folks supporting the channel and helping us to keep the thing going, we hopefully can. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for watching. We are going to be wrapping up tonight's stream a little bit early at only 1 hour and 54 minutes long. I know usually they're like 2 hours and 45 minutes long, but I'm kind of feeling really rough. So I hope everyone understands. And good night, good luck, stay safe, take care, Slava Ukraini, and long live the LSA, the Lee Spring Army never dies.
And good night, LSA. See you all tomorrow, and hopefully the Enforcer feels better. Slava Ukraini.
Slava Ukraini.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.